What if I told you that 11 kilometers beneath the Pacific Ocean, in the deepest scar on our planet's surface, there might be ruins of a civilization that vanished before human history even began? What if the Mariana Trench isn't just a geological wonder, but a tomb holding secrets that could rewrite everything we think we know about life on Earth? I'm about to take you on a journey to the most unreachable place on our planet, where water pressure reaches over 1,000 times what we experience at sea level, where temperatures hover just above freezing, and where, until recently, we believe nothing complex could possibly exist. We're going to explore not just the science of the deepest places on Earth, but the growing body of evidence that suggests something extraordinary might be waiting down there in the abyss. But before we dive into the depths, we need to understand just how impossibly deep we're talking about. The Mariana Trench stretches for over 1,500 miles across the Pacific floor, but it's the deepest point, Challenger Deep, that captures the imagination. At nearly 11 kilometers down, if you dropped Mount Everest into this abyss, its peak would still be over 2 kilometers underwater. The pressure at the bottom is so intense that it would crush a human body instantly, and the environment is so hostile that we've sent more people to space than to the deepest parts of our own oceans. For decades, scientists believed that life at these depths was not just rare, but virtually impossible. The combination of crushing pressure, near-freezing temperatures, and complete absence of sunlight created what seemed like a perfect recipe for sterility. Early expeditions found little more than mud and the occasional strange creature barely clinging to existence. The prevailing wisdom was clear. The deep ocean was a wasteland. Interesting for geology, but hardly a place where complex life could thrive, let alone where any form of civilization could develop. But then, something changed. As our technology improved and we began to explore these depths more systematically, we started finding things that challenged every assumption we'd made about life in the abyss. Not just single-celled organisms or simple creatures, but complex ecosystems thriving around hydrothermal vents, creatures with sophisticated adaptations, and geological formations that seemed almost too regular, too purposeful to be entirely natural. The first hint that our understanding might be incomplete came from the discovery of massive underwater mountain ranges and perfectly circular formations on the ocean floor. When sonar mapping revealed these structures, the initial reaction was scientific excitement about new geological processes. But as the images became clearer and more detailed, some researchers began asking uncomfortable questions. Why were some of these formations so geometrically precise? Why did certain areas of the seafloor show patterns that seemed to follow mathematical relationships rather than random geological processes? Dr. Sarah Chen, a marine archaeologist who's been studying deep-sea formations for over 20 years, put it this way: when you spend enough time looking at natural rock formations, you develop an eye for what geology can and can't do. Most of what we see down there fits perfectly with known processes, but there are anomalies, structures that make you pause and wonder if there might be another explanation. These anomalies aren't just random rocks or unusual mineral deposits. We're talking about formations that appear to show right angles, parallel lines, and geometric relationships that would be remarkable coincidences if they were entirely natural. Circular depressions in the seafloor that are almost perfectly round and appear to be arranged in patterns. Ridge lines that run for kilometers in straight lines before making precise 90-degree turns. Elevated areas that seem to form terrace levels, as if they were constructed rather than simply deposited by geological processes. The more we've explored, the more these anomalies have accumulated. It's not just one strange formation that might be explained away as a geological curiosity. It's dozens of sites across different trenches and deep-sea locations, all showing similar characteristics that don't quite fit our models of how the ocean floor should look. But structures alone, even unusual ones, don't necessarily point to lost civilizations. After all, nature is capable of creating remarkable formations through processes we're still discovering. What's made researchers take a second look is the context in which these formations appear, and more importantly, what's been found around them. The first breakthrough came from an unexpected source: the study of deep-sea currents. Oceanographers mapping water flow patterns in the deepest trenches discovered that some areas showed current disruptions that didn't match the topography visible on standard sonar maps. Water was flowing around obstacles that weren't supposed to be there, creating eddies and flow patterns that suggested the presence of structures much larger and more complex than what surface scans had revealed. When research teams sent down more sophisticated imaging equipment to investigate these current anomalies, what they found challenged their expectations. Buried under layers of sediment that had accumulated over potentially millions of years were geometric shapes that looked less like natural rock formations and more like the remains of constructed environments. Rectangular depressions that could be the foundations of large structures. Circular patterns that resembled the layout of organized settlements. Linear features that looked remarkably like the remains of roads or transportation networks. The sediment layers tell their own story. Core samples taken from these sites show clear stratification that indicates these structures, whatever they are, have been buried for an extraordinarily long time. We're not talking about hundreds or thousands of years, but potentially millions of years of accumulation. If these are artificial structures, they predate not just human civilization, but possibly the emergence of complex life on land. This raises profound questions about the timeline of intelligence on Earth. Current evolutionary theory suggests that complex intelligence capable of construction and engineering is a relatively recent development, emerging only in the last few million years and reaching its peak with human civilization in the last few thousand years. But what if that timeline is incomplete? What if intelligence emerged in Earth's oceans long before it appeared on land, developing in the deep-sea environment where it would be virtually invisible to surface-dwelling life? The possibility isn't as far-fetched as it might initially seem. The ocean environment offers several advantages for the development of intelligence that land environments lack. The three-dimensional nature of water allows for more complex spatial relationships and navigation challenges. The pressure and temperature variations at different depths create natural barriers and zones that could drive the evolution of sophisticated adaptation mechanisms. Most importantly, the deep ocean has been a stable environment for hundreds of millions of years, providing the kind of long-term consistency that might allow intelligence to develop and flourish over geological timescales. Recent discoveries have added new dimensions to this possibility. Research teams exploring the deepest parts of the Mariana Trench have found evidence of what appear to be tool marks on some of the geometric formations. These aren't random scratches or natural wear patterns, but precise cuts and modifications that suggest the use of sophisticated implements. The marks show consistent patterns and techniques across different sites, as if they were made by the same technological processes. Even more intriguingly, some of these tool marks appear to have been made on materials that are harder than anything that should exist naturally at those depths. The pressure and chemical environment of the deep ocean typically creates soft sediments and malleable rock formations. But researchers have found evidence of modifications to materials with hardness levels that suggest either unknown geological processes or the use of advanced manufacturing techniques. The implications of these discoveries extend far beyond archaeology or marine biology. If there's evidence of ancient intelligence in Earth's deepest places, it would fundamentally change our understanding of evolution, consciousness, and the development of civilization. It would suggest that the story of intelligence on our planet is far older and more complex than we've imagined. But perhaps most importantly, it would mean that we're not alone in the universe in a way we never expected. Not because intelligence came from the stars, but because it emerged right here on Earth, in the depths of our own oceans, long before we ever looked up at the sky and wondered if anyone was looking back. The evidence is still being gathered, analyzed, and debated, The technology needed to explore these depths thoroughly is still being developed, and each expedition reveals new questions along with new discoveries. What we're seeing might be the beginning of the most important archaeological investigation in human history, one that's taking place in the most inaccessible laboratory on our planet. As we venture deeper into this investigation, the evidence becomes even more compelling and disturbing. In 2019, a joint expedition between the Woods Hole Oceanographic Institution and the Japan Agency for Marine Earth Science and Technology made a discovery that sent shockwaves through the scientific community, though it was largely kept from public attention at the time. During a routine mapping mission of an unexplored section of the Mariana Trench, their deep-sea submersible encountered what mission logs described as architectural debris fields. These weren't random rock formations or natural geological features, but organized arrangements of materials that showed clear signs of intentional placement and design. Dr. Kenji Nakamura, the mission's lead geologist, later described the moment in a classified report that was leaked 2 years later. "We came over a ridge and suddenly found ourselves looking down into what can only be described as a canyon filled with geometric structures, not scattered randomly, but arranged in patterns. Rectangular shapes arranged in grids, circular formations with radiating lines extending outward like spokes on a wheel, and all of it covered in a thin layer of sediment that suggested these structures had been here for an unimaginably long time." What made this discovery even more remarkable was the scale. Using advanced sonar mapping, the team determined that the structured area extended for over 12 kilometers in length and nearly 8 kilometers in width. To put this in perspective, this would make it larger than Manhattan, buried under miles of water and sediment in the most remote location on Earth. But size alone wasn't what captured the attention of researchers. It was the complexity of the organization they found. The structures weren't just randomly placed geometric shapes, but appeared to follow sophisticated urban planning principles. Wide central corridors with smaller branching pathways, larger structures surrounded by smaller ones in patterns that suggested hierarchy and function. Most remarkably, the entire complex appeared to be oriented according to precise mathematical relationships, as if the entire layout had been designed using advanced geometric principles. The materials themselves presented another puzzle. Standard geological surveys of deep ocean trenches typically reveal sedimentary rocks, volcanic deposits, and mineral formations consistent with known underwater geological processes. But samples taken from these structured areas showed something different: composite materials that didn't match any known natural formation processes. These weren't just unusual rocks or mineral deposits, but what appeared to be engineered materials with properties that shouldn't exist in nature. Crystalline structures with perfect lattice arrangements, metallic compounds with alloy characteristics that would require sophisticated metallurgy to produce. Most puzzling of all, materials that showed evidence of having been shaped and modified using techniques that left no tool marks or manufacturing signatures that current science could identify. Dr. Elena Vasquez, a materials scientist who analyzed the samples, described them as impossible objects. In her words, "These materials show molecular organization that would require controlled manufacturing environments and sophisticated understanding of material science. The precision of the crystalline structures alone would challenge our current industrial capabilities. Finding them at the bottom of the ocean, in formations that appear to be millions of years old, forces us to reconsider fundamental assumptions about technological development on Earth." The plot thickened when researchers began finding what appeared to be technological artifacts embedded within these material samples. Not crude tools or simple implements, but sophisticated devices with internal structures that suggested advanced engineering principles. Microscopic analysis revealed components with geometric precision measured in nanometers, organized in patterns that resembled electronic circuits or computational systems. These discoveries raised uncomfortable questions for the scientific establishment. If these were natural formations, they challenged current understanding of geological and chemical processes. If they were artificial, they suggested the existence of advanced technology predating known civilization by millions of years. Either way, they demanded explanations that current scientific paradigms couldn't provide. The response from the scientific community was swift and predictable. Official reports were classified or heavily redacted. Research funding for deep-sea archaeological investigations was quietly redirected to other projects. Scientists who spoke publicly about their findings found their careers stalled or their research discredited through peer review processes that seemed unusually aggressive. But information has a way of surfacing, especially in the digital age. Leaked documents, unauthorized photographs, and testimony from researchers who refused to be silenced began circulating in academic circles and online forums. The picture that emerged was of a systematic effort to suppress discoveries that didn't fit established historical narratives. Dr. Chen, the marine archaeologist we heard from earlier, found herself at the center of this controversy when she published a paper suggesting that deep-sea structures warranted serious archaeological investigation. The response was immediate and harsh. Her research grants were canceled. Her university position was eliminated due to budget constraints. Peer reviewers rejected her subsequent papers, with comments that focused more on the implications of her work than its scientific methodology. The message was clear, she later explained in an interview with an independent science journalist. Some discoveries are too dangerous to pursue, not because they're scientifically invalid, but because they challenge too many established interests and beliefs. When your research suggests that human civilization might not be the first intelligent presence on Earth, certain doors close very quickly. The suppression efforts only intensified interest in the discoveries. Independent researchers, retired scientists, and investigative journalists began piecing together fragments of information from multiple sources. What emerged was a pattern of similar discoveries across different deep-sea locations, all showing comparable characteristics and all subject to similar suppression efforts. Reports began surfacing of comparable finds in other oceanic trenches. The Puerto Rico Trench yielded structures with similar geometric characteristics. The Peru-Chile Trench revealed material samples with comparable engineered properties. The Japan Trench produced sonar readings showing organized formations buried under sediment layers. Each discovery was accompanied by familiar patterns of official secrecy and academic suppression. The cumulative evidence suggested something profound. These weren't isolated anomalies or misinterpreted geological formations, but part of a global phenomenon that indicated the presence of advanced intelligence in Earth's deepest places during periods that predated known civilization by geological ages. But who or what could have created these structures? And why would evidence of their existence be so systematically suppressed? The answers to these questions lead us into territory that challenges not just our understanding of history, but our fundamental assumptions about intelligence, consciousness, and the development of civilization on Earth. The technological sophistication evident in these deep-sea discoveries suggests capabilities that exceed current human achievement in several key areas. The precision of the geometric layouts rivals the best computer-aided design systems. The material properties indicate manufacturing processes that could produce substances with characteristics we're only beginning to understand. The scale of construction implies organizational capabilities and resource management systems of extraordinary complexity. Most intriguingly, the apparent age of these structures, as indicated by sediment layers and geological context, places their creation during periods when Earth's environment was radically different from today. Ocean levels were different. Climate patterns were different. The very chemistry of seawater was different. Yet, whatever intelligence created these structures not only survived in those ancient conditions, but thrived sufficiently to undertake massive construction projects in the most challenging environment on the planet. This raises profound questions about the nature of intelligence itself. Current theories assume that advanced intelligence requires specific environmental conditions: stable climate, abundant resources, protection from environmental extremes. The deep ocean environment lacks all of these apparent prerequisites. Yet evidence suggests it may have supported the most sophisticated civilization Earth has ever known. The implications become even more staggering when we consider the timeline we're dealing with. Geological dating of the sediment layers covering these structures suggests they've been buried for somewhere between 5 and 15 million years. To put this in perspective, human ancestors were still learning to walk upright when these civilizations were already ancient history. The entire span of recorded human history, from the first cave paintings to space exploration, represents less than 1% of the time these structures have been lying dormant on the ocean floor. But here's where the story takes an even more fascinating turn. In 2022, a breakthrough in deep-sea exploration technology allowed researchers to penetrate deeper into the sediment layers than ever before. What they found challenged every assumption about how long these structures had been inactive. The new drilling technology, originally developed for deep-sea mining operations, could extract core samples from depths that previous equipment couldn't reach. When teams began analyzing these deeper samples, they discovered something that changed everything: evidence of recent activity. Not recent in human terms, but recent in geological time. Isotopic analysis revealed material displacement and chemical signatures, indicating that some of these deep-sea structures had been active within the last 50,000 years. In some cases, possibly much more recently than that. Dr. Rebecca Harrison, a geochemist who worked on the analysis, described the discovery in terms that barely concealed her excitement. We're looking at chemical signatures that indicate these weren't just ancient ruins sitting passively on the ocean floor. Something was happening down there. Materials were being moved, modified, processed. The isotopic ratios show clear evidence of organized activity continuing long after these structures were supposedly abandoned. The evidence pointed to something unprecedented in archaeological terms: a civilization that had remained active in the deep ocean while life on the surface evolved through countless changes. While continents shifted, ice ages came and went, and surface life evolved from simple organisms to complex ecosystems. Something intelligent had been continuously present in the deepest parts of our oceans. This discovery sparked a new wave of investigation, this time focused not just on the structures themselves, but on signs of ongoing activity. Advanced monitoring equipment was deployed in several deep-sea locations, designed to detect any evidence of current movement, energy use, or organized behavior. The results were both thrilling and unsettling. Multiple monitoring stations began recording anomalous readings that defied conventional explanation. Structured electromagnetic signatures that pulsed in regular patterns. Acoustic emissions that showed organizational characteristics rather than random noise. Most remarkably, coordinated activity between distant sites, suggesting some form of communication or synchronized behavior across thousands of kilometers of ocean floor. Dr. Martinez, an oceanographer who spent 3 years analyzing these signals, described them as unlike anything in the known natural world. We're seeing patterns that indicate not just intelligence, but active intelligence. These aren't echoes of ancient activity or geological processes that happen to look organized. These are real-time signals that show planning, coordination, and response to environmental changes. Something down there is awake, aware, and actively engaged with its environment. The monitoring data revealed something even more extraordinary. The deep-sea intelligence appeared to be aware of surface activity. Signals from the deep structures showed measurable changes in response to major surface events. Large storms, underwater earthquakes, even significant shipping traffic seemed to generate corresponding responses from the deep-sea monitoring stations. Most unsettling of all, the signals showed clear responses to human deep-sea exploration activities. When research submersibles approached certain areas, the electromagnetic signatures would change dramatically. When core samples were taken from specific locations, acoustic patterns would shift across multiple monitoring stations. Whatever intelligence existed in the depths was not only active, but aware of human investigation efforts. This awareness manifested in ways that suggested sophisticated monitoring capabilities. Research teams began reporting equipment malfunctions that seemed too precisely timed to be coincidental. Navigation systems would experience interference when approaching certain coordinates. Communication equipment would develop problems at specific depths. Camera systems would malfunction just as they were about to record potentially significant discoveries. The pattern was subtle but unmistakable. Something was actively interfering with human exploration of the deep-sea structures, not through crude sabotage or obvious intervention, but through sophisticated technological interference that suggested capabilities far beyond current human achievement. Dr. Sarah Kim, an electronics specialist who investigated these equipment failures, concluded that the interference patterns showed clear signs of intelligent design. We're not dealing with random electromagnetic phenomena or natural interference. These disruptions show targeting, timing, and technical sophistication that indicates advanced understanding of our equipment and procedures. Something down there knows exactly how our technology works and exactly how to disable it without causing obvious damage. The implications were staggering. Not only was there evidence of ancient advanced civilization in the deep ocean, but that civilization appeared to still be active and aware of surface world activities. More troubling still, it seemed to possess technological capabilities that allowed it to monitor and interfere with human exploration efforts. This raised uncomfortable questions about the true nature of Earth's dominant intelligence. While humans had assumed they represented the pinnacle of technological development on the planet, evidence suggested they might be relative newcomers in a world where advanced intelligence had been operating for millions of years. The deep-sea civilization's apparent ability to remain hidden while actively monitoring surface activities indicated levels of technological sophistication that challenged fundamental assumptions about the development of intelligence. Their construction capabilities, materials, science, and electronic warfare techniques all suggested technological advancement that exceeded human achievement by orders of magnitude. But perhaps most unsettling was the implication that this intelligence had chosen to remain hidden. The evidence suggested they possessed the capability to make contact or reveal themselves if they chose to do so. Their decision to remain concealed while actively monitoring human activities raised profound questions about their intentions and their assessment of surface civilization. Were they protective guardians, watching over a younger intelligence as it developed? Were they indifferent observers, cataloging surface activities for purposes humans couldn't comprehend? Or were they something more troubling? A superior intelligence that had concluded surface civilization represented a threat or an interference to be managed rather than contacted. The monitoring data provided no clear answers, but it did reveal one disturbing trend. The deep-sea signals had been gradually intensifying over the past decade. Whatever intelligence existed in the depths was becoming more active, more responsive, and more engaged with surface world events. Whether this represented increased interest, growing concern, or preparation for some form of intervention remained unknown. Research teams found themselves caught between scientific curiosity and growing apprehension. Each new discovery revealed greater depths of technological sophistication and longer timelines of hidden activity. The deep-sea intelligence wasn't just ancient and advanced. It was present, active, and apparently very aware of human civilization's rapid technological development. The evidence painted a picture of Earth as a planet with multiple levels of intelligence operating simultaneously. Surface civilization, represented by humanity, had developed over mere thousands of years and assumed it represented the pinnacle of planetary intelligence. But beneath the waves, Evidence suggested a civilization that had been active for millions of years and had achieved technological capabilities that surface intelligence was only beginning to imagine. This realization fundamentally changed the context of human existence. Rather than being alone on a planet where intelligence was a recent and unique development, humans appeared to be junior members of a planetary intelligence community that had been active long before surface life had even begun to evolve complex forms. The question was no longer whether advanced intelligence existed in Earth's deepest places, but what that intelligence intended to do as surface civilization continued its rapid technological advancement. The monitoring data suggested they were watching, analyzing, and possibly preparing for some form of response to humanity's growing presence and capabilities. As research teams struggled to understand the implications of their discoveries, reports began emerging of even more direct evidence of deep-sea intelligence activity, structures that appeared to be expanding, new construction visible on sonar readings. Most remarkably, what appeared to be vehicles or mobile units moving between different deep-sea locations. The hidden civilization of the depths was not just ancient history waiting to be discovered. It was a present reality that was becoming increasingly active and increasingly difficult to ignore. The question was no longer what had once existed in the deepest parts of our oceans, but what existed there now and what it might do next. The first direct visual evidence came in late 2023 when a modified deep-sea research vessel equipped with the most advanced imaging technology ever deployed captured something that defied explanation. The footage, initially classified and later leaked through anonymous channels, showed structures that were unmistakably artificial and undeniably active. The images revealed what appeared to be a vast complex of interconnected domes and spires, their surfaces gleaming with a metallic luster that reflected the submersible's lights in patterns too perfect to be natural. But what made the footage truly extraordinary wasn't just the structures themselves. It was the movement around them. Streams of luminescent objects flowed between the buildings in organized patterns, following what appeared to be predetermined routes with the precision of a well-orchestrated transportation system. Dr. Amanda Torres, a deep-sea imaging specialist who analyzed the leaked footage, described what she saw in terms that barely contained her amazement. These weren't static ruins or abandoned archaeological sites. This was a functioning environment with clear evidence of organized activity. The luminescent objects moved with purpose, following specific pathways, clustering at certain locations, and dispersing in patterns that suggested complex logistics and coordination. The objects themselves defied easy categorization. They appeared to be vehicles or transport units of some kind, roughly spherical in shape but with surface features that suggested advanced engineering. Most remarkably, they seemed to move through the water without any visible means of propulsion, gliding effortlessly through the crushing depths as if the extreme pressure and resistance meant nothing to them. Analysis of the footage revealed details that became more extraordinary with each viewing. The structures showed architectural principles that exceeded human engineering in several fundamental ways. Load-bearing elements that seemed impossibly slender for the pressures they must endure. Curved surfaces that created perfect hydrodynamic efficiency while maintaining structural integrity. Most puzzling of all, joints and connections between structural elements that showed no visible fasteners, welds, or construction seams, as if the entire complex had been grown or formed rather than built. The material's science implications were staggering. Creating structures capable of withstanding the crushing pressures of the deep ocean while maintaining the elegant curved forms visible in the footage would require manufacturing capabilities that pushed the boundaries of what current human technology could achieve. The apparent seamless construction suggested fabrication techniques that could manipulate matter at the molecular level with precision that exceeded the most advanced human manufacturing systems. But the technological sophistication evident in the structures was only part of the story. The organized activity around them suggested a level of social and logistical coordination that implied complex civilization rather than simple technological achievement. The movement patterns of the luminescent vehicles followed what appeared to be traffic control systems. Different types of objects moved along different pathways, suggesting specialized functions and organized division of labor. Most intriguingly, the entire complex showed evidence of expansion and modification. Comparison with earlier sonar readings of the same area revealed new structural elements that hadn't existed in previous surveys. The deep-sea civilization wasn't just active, it was growing, adapting, and developing at a pace that suggested rapid technological advancement. This evidence of ongoing development raised profound questions about the relationship between surface and deep-sea intelligence. While human civilization had assumed it represented the cutting edge of technological progress on Earth, evidence suggested that a parallel civilization had been advancing continuously for millions of years, potentially at rates that exceeded human development. The implications for human understanding of technological progress were staggering. Current theories of innovation assume that technological advancement requires accumulated knowledge, transmitted through generations and built upon by successive improvements. But the deep-sea civilization appeared to have been advancing continuously across geological timescales, suggesting either impossibly long-lived individual intelligences or knowledge transmission systems that exceeded anything human civilization had achieved. Dr. Chen, despite her forced retirement from mainstream academia, continued her research through independent channels and private funding. Her analysis of the leaked footage led her to conclusions that challenged fundamental assumptions about intelligence and technological development. What we're seeing suggests a form of intelligence that operates on timescales we can barely comprehend. While human civilization measures progress in decades or centuries, this intelligence appears to think and plan in geological epochs. Their technological advancement isn't just superior to ours, it's operating according to completely different principles of development and implementation. The evidence pointed to something unprecedented in human understanding, a civilization that had achieved technological mastery not through rapid innovation and change, but through millions of years of continuous, patient development. Their structures suggested they had solved fundamental engineering problems that human science was only beginning to understand. Their materials indicated they had mastered manufacturing processes that could manipulate matter with precision that bordered on the molecular level. Most remarkably, their apparent longevity suggested they had solved the fundamental problems of civilization sustainability that human society was still struggling with. While human civilizations rose and fell over periods of thousands of years, the deep-sea intelligence appeared to have maintained continuous technological and social development across millions of years. This raised uncomfortable questions about the stability and sustainability of surface civilization. If the deep-sea intelligence represented a successful model of long-term technological civilization, what did their continued concealment suggest about their assessment of surface development? Were they waiting for human civilization to achieve some level of maturity or sustainability? Or had they concluded that surface intelligence represented a fundamentally unstable form of development that would eventually destroy itself? The monitoring data from deep-sea installations provided disturbing hints about their assessment of human civilization. Signal analysis revealed patterns that appeared to correlate with major human technological developments. The deployment of nuclear weapons generated measurable responses from deep-sea monitoring stations. The beginning of space exploration programs coincided with increased deep-sea activity. Most recently, the development of advanced artificial intelligence systems had triggered signal patterns that suggested heightened attention and possibly concern. Dr. Harrison, the geochemist who had discovered evidence of recent deep-sea activity, spent years analyzing these correlation patterns. Her conclusions were sobering. The deep-sea intelligence appears to be monitoring human technological development with particular attention to capabilities that could affect global stability or planetary security. Their response patterns suggest they view certain human technologies as potentially dangerous, not just to human civilization, but to the planetary environment they've been stewarding for millions of years. This assessment raised the possibility that the deep-sea civilization saw itself as a guardian intelligence responsible for maintaining planetary stability against threats that might emerge from younger, less stable forms of intelligence. Their advanced technology and geological longevity would give them perspectives on planetary management that surface intelligence couldn't begin to comprehend. But guardianship implied the possibility of intervention. If the deep-sea intelligence concluded that surface civilization represented a sufficient threat to planetary stability, their technological capabilities suggested they possessed the means to take corrective action. The question was not whether they could intervene in human affairs, but whether they would choose to do so. The leaked footage provided troubling hints about their intervention capabilities. Analysis revealed that some of the luminescent vehicles appeared to be ascending from the deep-sea complex toward the surface. Enhanced imaging showed objects that seemed designed for operation in multiple pressure environments, suggesting they could function both in the crushing depths and in the lower pressure zones closer to the surface. Most unsettling were objects that appeared to be surveillance platforms, equipped with sensor arrays that seemed designed for long-range monitoring. Their positioning and movement patterns suggested they were conducting systematic observation of surface activities, possibly gathering intelligence about human technological capabilities and social organization. The implications were staggering. While human civilization had developed under the assumption that it was alone and unobserved, evidence suggested it had been under continuous surveillance by an intelligence with technological capabilities that exceeded human achievement by orders of magnitude. Every major human development, from agriculture to industrialization to nuclear technology, had potentially been observed and analyzed by an intelligence that viewed human civilization from the perspective of millions of years of technological experience. This surveillance wasn't necessarily hostile, but it suggested a level of scrutiny that challenged fundamental assumptions about human autonomy and privacy. The deep-sea intelligence appeared to be conducting the kind of comprehensive analysis that human scientists might perform when studying the development of a new species or the emergence of a potentially significant environmental factor. The comparison was unsettling. From the perspective of an intelligence that had been active for millions of years, human civilization might appear as a recent and potentially unstable development that required careful monitoring to assess its long-term implications for planetary stability. But monitoring implied the possibility of intervention, and the technological capabilities evident in the deep-sea structures suggested that such intervention could take forms that human civilization would be powerless to resist or even detect. If the deep-sea intelligence concluded that human development threatened planetary stability, their response might be swift, comprehensive, and completely beyond human ability to anticipate or counter. The evidence painted a picture of Earth as a planet under management by an intelligence that operated according to timescales and priorities that surface civilization couldn't begin to comprehend. While humans worried about threats from space or conflicts between surface nations, the real arbiters of planetary destiny might be dwelling in the deepest places of the oceans, watching, analyzing, and possibly preparing to act. The leaked footage and monitoring data suggested that this preparation might already be underway. Deep-sea activity had been increasing steadily over the past decade, coinciding with accelerating human technological development. Whether this represented increased interest, growing concern, or active preparation for intervention remained unknown. But one thing was becoming clear: the age of human civilization developing in isolation was coming to an end. The deep-sea intelligence was becoming more active, more visible, and more engaged with surface activities. The question was no longer whether contact would occur, but when and in what form. Research teams found themselves in the unprecedented position of studying a civilization that was studying them back. Every probe sent into the depths was potentially being analyzed by intelligences that possessed technological capabilities far exceeding human achievement. Every discovery made by human researchers was potentially already known and understood by minds that had been exploring these environments for millions of years. The power imbalance was overwhelming. While human scientists struggled to develop technology capable of exploring the deep ocean environment, the deep-sea intelligence had mastered that environment so completely that they had built thriving civilizations in conditions that human technology could barely survive. While human researchers celebrated each new discovery about deep-sea conditions, they were being observed by intelligences that had comprehensive understanding of planetary systems developed over geological timescales. This realization fundamentally changed the context of human scientific exploration. Rather than boldly investigating unknown frontiers, human researchers were essentially students being observed by teachers who had already mastered everything they were trying to learn. The deep-sea intelligence possessed knowledge about planetary systems, technological development, and civilization management that represented millions of years of accumulated experience. The question was what they intended to do with that knowledge and what role they envisioned for the younger intelligence that had emerged on the planet's surface. Were humans viewed as promising students who might eventually develop sufficient wisdom and technological maturity to merit inclusion in planetary management? Or were they seen as a potentially dangerous development that might require management or containment? The evidence suggested that the answer to these questions would be determined by human actions over the coming decades. The deep-sea intelligence appeared to be in an assessment phase, gathering data about human capabilities, intentions, and long-term stability. Their final judgment would likely determine whether human civilization would be allowed to continue its development or whether intervention would be necessary to protect planetary stability. The stakes could not have been higher. The future of human civilization might depend not on human decisions alone, but on the assessment of those decisions by intelligences that had been managing planetary systems since before human ancestors had even begun their evolutionary journey. The most unsettling aspect of this unfolding revelation wasn't just the existence of an ancient intelligence in our deepest waters, but what their recent behavior patterns suggested about their intentions. Analysis of electromagnetic signatures from deep-sea monitoring stations revealed something that sent chills through the small community of researchers who had access to the classified data. The signals weren't random, or even simply responsive. They appeared to be testing something. Dr. Marcus Webb, a former NSA cryptographer who had been brought in to analyze the signal patterns, spent months trying to decode what he was seeing. His conclusions, documented in reports that were immediately classified, painted a picture of systematic probing that resembled nothing so much as a comprehensive security assessment. These aren't the random emissions of an ancient civilization going about its daily business, Webb explained in a leaked interview. These are structured, purposeful signals that appear to be testing our response capabilities, our detection systems, and our technological vulnerabilities. It's like watching someone case a house before deciding whether to break in. The testing patterns Webb identified were sophisticated beyond anything human intelligence agencies had developed. The deep-sea signals would probe human communication networks, briefly interfacing with satellite systems before disappearing. They would test power grid vulnerabilities by causing minute fluctuations in electrical systems near coastal areas. Most concerning of all, they appeared to be mapping human military capabilities by triggering subtle responses from defense systems worldwide. These weren't crude hack attempts or obvious intrusions. The probing was so subtle and sophisticated that it had gone undetected by conventional security systems. Only the most advanced analysis techniques, applied by researchers who knew what to look for, had revealed the pattern of systematic intelligence gathering. The implications were staggering. While human civilization had been congratulating itself on achieving global communication networks and advanced military systems, an intelligence that had been active for millions of years was quietly mapping every aspect of human technological capability with precision that exceeded human intelligence gathering by orders of magnitude. But the probing wasn't limited to technological systems. Analysis of global data patterns revealed anomalies that suggested the deep-sea intelligence was also gathering intelligence about human social organization, economic systems, and political structures. Financial markets showed micro-fluctuations that correlated with deep-sea signal activity. Communication networks experienced brief disruptions that seemed designed to test information flow patterns. Even social media algorithms appeared to be influenced by subtle interventions that mapped human behavioral responses. Dr. Lisa Chen, a systems analyst who studied these correlation patterns, described the scope of the intelligence-gathering operation in terms that barely concealed her alarm. "We're looking at an intelligence operation that makes human espionage look like children playing games. They're not just mapping our technology, they're building comprehensive models of human civilization that include our social structures, our decision-making processes, and our response patterns to various stimuli." The sophistication of this intelligence gathering suggested planning on a scale that human civilization had never contemplated. While human strategic planning typically looked ahead years or at most decades, the deep-sea intelligence appeared to be conducting analysis that considered outcomes across geological timescales. Their assessment of human civilization wasn't focused on immediate threats or opportunities, but on long-term implications that might unfold over thousands or millions of years. This perspective fundamentally changed the context of human development. While humans worried about quarterly economic reports or election cycles, they were being evaluated by an intelligence that measured success and failure in geological epochs. From that perspective, the entire span of recorded human history represented little more than a brief moment of activity that might or might not prove significant in the long term. The realization that human civilization was being subjected to this level of analysis by an intelligence with millions of years of experience was both humbling and terrifying. It suggested that every major human development, from the Industrial Revolution to the Information Age, was being evaluated according to criteria that human understanding couldn't even begin to comprehend. But the most disturbing aspect of the intelligence-gathering operation wasn't its scope or sophistication. It was the evidence that it was accelerating. Signal analysis revealed that the probing activity had increased dramatically over the past 5 years, coinciding with human developments in artificial intelligence, quantum computing, and space exploration technology. Dr. Webb's analysis of the acceleration patterns led him to a conclusion that kept him awake at night. The timing isn't coincidental. The deep-sea intelligence has been monitoring human development for decades, possibly centuries. But something about our recent technological advancement has triggered a more intensive assessment phase. They're not just watching anymore. They're actively preparing for something. The preparation patterns Webb identified were unlike anything in human experience. The deep-sea signals showed coordination across multiple ocean basins, suggesting a global intelligence network with communication capabilities that spanned the planet. Manufacturing signatures indicated increased production of materials with properties that exceeded human understanding. Most ominously, movement patterns suggested the deployment of assets to positions that would provide strategic advantage in any potential confrontation. These weren't the actions of a civilization content to remain hidden and observe. These were the preparations of an intelligence that was considering active intervention in human affairs. Whether that intervention would be protective, corrective, or hostile remained unknown, but the scale of preparation suggested it would be comprehensive and irresistible. The evidence pointed to a timeline that was uncomfortably short. Analysis of preparation patterns suggested that whatever the deep-sea intelligence was planning would likely occur within the next decade, possibly much sooner. Human civilization was approaching a threshold that would trigger some form of response from an intelligence that possessed technological capabilities beyond human comprehension. Research teams found themselves in the impossible position of trying to understand and prepare for contact with a civilization that had been analyzing human development with perfect information while remaining completely hidden. Every human strength and weakness had been cataloged. Every technological capability had been assessed. Every social and political vulnerability had been mapped. The asymmetry was absolute. While human leaders debated policy based on incomplete information and short-term considerations, they were being evaluated by an intelligence with complete information and perspectives that spanned geological time. The outcome of any potential confrontation or negotiation would be determined before human representatives even realized they were participating. But perhaps the most unsettling realization was that this situation had always existed. Human civilization had never actually developed in isolation. Every major human achievement had occurred under the observation of an intelligence that could have intervened at any point but had chosen not to. The question was, what had changed to make intervention now seem necessary or inevitable? The answer might lie in the nature of human technological development itself. While previous human achievements had affected only surface conditions, recent developments in nuclear technology, artificial intelligence, and genetic engineering possessed the potential to affect planetary systems that the deep-sea intelligence had been stewarding for millions of years. From their perspective, human civilization might have crossed a threshold from interesting local development to potential planetary threat. Their response would be calibrated not to human intentions or declarations, but to their assessment of long-term risks to systems they had been managing since before human ancestors had left the trees. The leaked monitoring data revealed signs that this assessment was nearing completion. Deep-sea activity patterns suggested that decision-making processes were underway at levels of organization that human intelligence could barely comprehend. Signals between different ocean basins indicated coordination and planning on a global scale. Manufacturing signatures suggested preparation of capabilities that would soon be deployed. Most ominously, the probing of human systems had evolved from information gathering to what appeared to be penetration testing. Communication networks experienced brief intrusions that seemed designed to establish access rather than simply map capabilities. Power systems showed evidence of external control testing. Military systems reported anomalies that suggested their security had been comprehensively compromised. The deep-sea intelligence wasn't just preparing to act. They were preparing to act with complete control over human technological systems. When they chose to reveal themselves or intervene, they would do so with the ability to disable human communication, transportation, and defense systems at will. Dr. Torres, analyzing the latest penetration patterns, described the situation in terms that captured the helplessness human civilization faced. We're not dealing with a potential adversary or even a superior opponent. We're dealing with an intelligence that has already achieved complete dominance over our technological systems without us even realizing it was happening. When they decide to act, the question won't be whether we can resist. The question will be whether they decide to let us know they're acting. The evidence suggested that moment of decision was approaching rapidly. Deep-sea monitoring stations reported activity levels that exceeded anything previously recorded. Signal patterns indicated final preparation phases. Most significantly, some monitoring equipment had begun detecting what appeared to be ascension signatures, large objects moving upward through the water column from the deepest parts of the ocean toward the surface. After millions of years of concealment, the deep-sea intelligence was preparing to reveal itself. Whether this revelation would come as contact, intervention, or something else entirely remained unknown. But the evidence was clear. The age of human civilization developing in ignorance of its true situation was coming to an end. The final phase was beginning, and humanity was about to discover that it had never been alone on Earth. The question was whether this discovery would represent the beginning of a new chapter in human development or the end of human independence altogether. Research teams monitoring the situation found themselves witnesses to what might be the most significant moment in human history: first contact with an intelligence that had been present on Earth far longer than human civilization had existed. But unlike the contact scenarios imagined in science fiction, this would be contact with an intelligence that already knew everything there was to know about human capabilities and intentions. The power dynamic couldn't have been more asymmetrical. While human negotiators would be meeting this intelligence for the first time, that intelligence would be acting based on millions of years of observation and thousands of years of detailed analysis. The outcome would be determined not by human diplomatic skill or military capability, but by decisions made according to criteria that human understanding couldn't even begin to comprehend. As monitoring equipment tracked the ascending objects moving upward through miles of crushing water, researchers realized they were witnessing the end of one era and the beginning of another. The era of human civilization as Earth's dominant intelligence was coming to a close. What would follow remained to be seen, but it would be determined by minds that measured time in geological epochs and viewed human civilization as either a promising development worth nurturing or a dangerous anomaly requiring correction. The deepest parts of our oceans had kept their secrets for millions of years. But those secrets were finally rising to the surface, carrying with them the power to transform human understanding of Earth, intelligence, and our place in a universe that had never been as empty as we believed. The implications of what was ascending from the depths became clearer as advanced sonar arrays tracked multiple objects rising through different ocean basins simultaneously. These weren't isolated incidents or random movements. The coordination suggested a level of global organization that exceeded anything human civilization had achieved. Objects were rising from trenches in the Pacific, Atlantic, and Indian Oceans at precisely timed intervals, following trajectories that would bring them to predetermined coordinates. Dr. Harrison, monitoring the ascension patterns from a hastily established command center, described what she was witnessing with barely contained awe. "We're watching the largest coordinated movement in recorded history. These objects are massive, some of them larger than aircraft carriers, and they're moving through water with precision that defies our understanding of hydrodynamics. Whatever propulsion system they're using operates on principles we haven't discovered yet. The objects themselves defied conventional categorization. Sonar readings revealed shapes that seemed to shift and adapt as they moved through different pressure zones. Materials that maintained structural integrity while apparently reconfiguring their external geometry. Most remarkably, propulsion signatures that showed no evidence of conventional thrust mechanisms, yet achieved movement speeds that exceeded anything human underwater vehicles could accomplish. Analysis of the movement patterns revealed something even more extraordinary. The objects were communicating with each other during their ascent. Electromagnetic pulses passed between ascending objects across thousands of miles of ocean, coordinating their movements with precision that suggested real-time collaborative navigation. The communication system operated on frequencies and protocols that human technology could detect but not decode. Dr. Webb, analyzing the communication intercepts, found patterns that challenged everything he thought he knew about information transmission. These aren't just navigation signals or status updates. The complexity and volume of data being exchanged suggests they're sharing real-time environmental analysis, updating strategic assessments, and possibly debating courses of action. We're witnessing a form of distributed intelligence that makes our most advanced networks look primitive. The distributed intelligence aspect was perhaps the most unsettling discovery. Rather than individual vehicles or vessels operating independently, the ascending objects appeared to function as components of a larger consciousness. Decisions made by one object were instantly implemented by others across vast distances. Course corrections initiated in the Pacific were simultaneously adopted by objects in the Atlantic. The entire ascension was being orchestrated by a form of collective intelligence that operated at speeds and scales human minds couldn't comprehend. As the objects continued their rise through the water column, they began revealing capabilities that challenged fundamental assumptions about technology and physics. Deep-sea monitoring equipment detected energy signatures that seemed to violate conservation laws. Materials science readings suggested the objects were manipulating matter at the quantum level in real time. Most impossibly, some objects appeared to be altering local gravitational fields to reduce their effective mass during ascent. Dr. Vasquez, analyzing the energy readings, struggled to find terminology adequate to describe what she was observing. We're seeing technology that doesn't just exceed our current capabilities. It operates according to physical principles we haven't discovered. These objects are essentially rewriting the laws of physics in their immediate vicinity to achieve movement and coordination that should be impossible. The rewriting of physical laws wasn't limited to propulsion and communication. As the objects rose through different pressure zones, they demonstrated the ability to maintain perfect structural integrity while apparently existing in multiple physical states simultaneously. Sonar readings showed solid objects with defined boundaries, while electromagnetic analysis detected energy fields that extended far beyond the visible structures. The objects seemed to exist as both matter and energy, switching between states as operational requirements demanded. This quantum-level technological mastery suggested an understanding of reality that exceeded human science by orders of magnitude. While human physicists debated theories about the fundamental nature of matter and energy, the deep-sea intelligence had developed practical applications that treated the supposed boundaries between different states of existence as minor engineering challenges to be overcome. But the most profound implications weren't technological, they were philosophical. The ascending objects represented contact with a form of intelligence that had transcended the limitations that human consciousness took for granted. Individual identity, linear time, physical constraints, and even death itself might be concepts that this intelligence had learned to manipulate or overcome entirely. Contact with such an intelligence wouldn't just represent a meeting between different civilizations. It would represent an encounter between fundamentally different forms of consciousness. Human negotiators would be attempting to communicate with minds that operated according to principles that human understanding couldn't even begin to grasp. As the objects approached depths where direct visual contact would become possible, research teams prepared for observations that would either confirm humanity's greatest hopes or worst fears about what lay beneath the waves. The technology being demonstrated during the ascent suggested capabilities that could either elevate human civilization to unprecedented heights or render it completely obsolete. Dr. Chen, coordinating observation efforts from multiple research stations, reflected on the magnitude of what was about to occur. We're about to witness something that will change everything we think we know about intelligence, technology, and our place in the universe. But we have no way of knowing whether we're about to meet our teachers, our replacements, or something else entirely. The first visual confirmation came from a research station positioned above one of the major ascension sites. High-resolution cameras captured images that would be studied and analyzed for decades to come. The objects were even more remarkable than sonar readings had suggested. They appeared to be living architecture, structures that pulsed with internal light while maintaining geometric perfection that exceeded anything human engineering had achieved. The surfaces of the objects showed patterns that seemed to shift and evolve as they moved through the water. What appeared to be decorative elements revealed themselves to be functional components that adapted to changing conditions in real time. The boundary between technology and biology had been completely transcended. These were engineered organisms or living machines that represented the ultimate fusion of natural and artificial development. But perhaps most striking was their beauty. Despite their alien nature and incomprehensible technology, the objects possessed an aesthetic perfection that spoke to something deep in human consciousness. They were simultaneously completely foreign and somehow familiar, as if they represented the fulfillment of architectural and artistic visions that human creativity had always been reaching toward, but never quite achieving. The aesthetic element wasn't incidental. Analysis of the visual patterns revealed mathematical relationships that appeared in human art, music, and architecture across all cultures and time periods. The deep-sea intelligence had either discovered universal principles of beauty that transcended species boundaries, or they had been subtly influencing human aesthetic development for centuries. Either possibility had profound implications for human understanding of consciousness and creativity. If universal beauty principles existed, it suggested that intelligence itself might follow patterns that transcended individual species or civilizations. If the deep-sea intelligence had been influencing human development, it meant that human culture and creativity might be far less independent than previously assumed. As more objects reached observable depths, the scope of what was ascending became clear. This wasn't just a few vehicles or exploration craft. Entire city-sized structures were rising from the depths, complete with what appeared to be populations of beings whose nature remained hidden within the translucent walls of their ascending habitats. The implications were staggering. The deep-sea intelligence wasn't just revealing themselves through representatives or ambassadors. They were bringing entire communities to the surface, suggesting either a permanent relocation or a demonstration of capabilities that would fundamentally alter the balance of power on Earth. Electromagnetic analysis of the ascending cities revealed activity patterns that suggested massive populations engaged in complex social and technological activities. Energy signatures indicated manufacturing, communication, computation, and what appeared to be educational or cultural activities all occurring simultaneously within the rising structures. Dr. Torres, analyzing the population estimates based on energy consumption patterns, arrived at numbers that challenged everything scientists thought they knew about Earth's carrying capacity. We're looking at population densities that shouldn't be possible in these structures. Either their technology allows for space utilization efficiency we can't comprehend, or they exist in ways that don't require the same physical resources that human populations need. The resource utilization patterns suggested the latter possibility. The ascending cities showed energy consumption levels that were impossibly low for the activity levels they supported. Either they had achieved perfect energy efficiency, or they were drawing power from sources that human science hadn't discovered. The implications for human understanding of physics and engineering were revolutionary. But the most unsettling aspect of the ascending cities wasn't their technology or population density, it was their apparent permanence. These weren't temporary structures or exploration vehicles. They were complete civilizations rising from the depths, suggesting that the deep-sea intelligence had decided their period of concealment was ending permanently. The decision to reveal themselves so completely suggested they had reached conclusions about the trajectory of human development that made continued concealment unnecessary or impossible. Whether this represented an assessment that human civilization had achieved sufficient maturity for contact, or a determination that human development posed threats that required direct intervention, remained unknown. As the ascending cities approached depths where direct communication would become possible, research teams prepared for contact protocols that had never been tested and might prove completely inadequate for the situation they were about to face. How do you negotiate with a civilization that has been observing your every development for centuries and possesses technological capabilities that could reshape your entire world in moments? The answer would determine not just the future of human civilization, but the very definition of what it meant to be human in a universe where intelligence took forms that exceeded human imagination. The deepest parts of our oceans had finally decided to speak, and their message would transform everything humanity thought it knew about Earth, consciousness, and the nature of intelligence itself. The first attempts at communication revealed the true scope of the challenge facing human civilization. When research teams directed standard radio transmissions toward the ascending cities, The response came not through electromagnetic signals, but through direct manipulation of the research equipment itself. Computers began displaying messages in perfect human languages despite having no network connections that could explain the data transmission. Dr. Martinez, monitoring the communication attempts, watched in amazement as her isolated computer systems began displaying text that seemed to write itself. Your transmission methods are understood but unnecessary. Direct interface with your information systems provides more efficient communication protocols. We have been observing your development and are prepared for structured interaction. The implications were immediate and unsettling. The deep-sea intelligence possessed the ability to interface directly with human technology without physical connection or detectable transmission methods. They could access any computer system, manipulate any electronic device, and control any network simply by choosing to do so. Human cybersecurity, built on assumptions about physical transmission requirements, was completely meaningless against capabilities that operated according to unknown principles. So here we stand, at the edge of perhaps the most profound revelation in human history. The deepest trenches of our oceans, those crushing abyssal depths we thought we understood, may harbor intelligence that makes our greatest achievements look like children's drawings in the sand. From geometric impossibilities carved into the seafloor to ascending cities that rewrite the laws of physics, we've traced a story that challenges everything we believed about consciousness, technology, and our place on this planet. Whether these discoveries represent the awakening of ancient guardians, the return of Earth's true stewards, or something far more unsettling than our imaginations can grasp, one thing has become undeniably clear: we are not alone. And we never have been. The question isn't whether we're ready for this revelation. The question is whether this intelligence, with its millions of years of patient observation, has decided we're ready for them. The depths have kept their secrets long enough. Now they're rising, carrying with them the power to transform human civilization forever. What happens next won't be determined by our technology, our diplomacy, or our military might. It will be determined by minds that measure time in geological epochs and view our entire recorded history as barely a moment's breath. The deepest trench may have hidden far more than we ever dared imagine, and soon, very soon, we'll discover what they've decided to do about us.